The most exhausted people in the room are often the ones no one worries about. You look fine. Everything in your day-to-day is going great. You're probably the person other people come to when they're not fine. Yet underneath that, something is running that no one on the outside can see, including sometimes even you. Welcome to Human Evolution, the podcast where growth gets real, patterns get exposed, and things start to look a little different. I'm Jodie Thaler, integrative neuroregulation coach and the founder of MindDrop. This is where we have the conversations that don't always get said out loud, unpacking emotional regulation, neuroscience, and the patterns shaping how you think, feel, and show up in the world, and what it really takes to change. For the self-aware, heart-led humans and high performers who are done running on autopilot and ready to live life on purpose. Let's go. So let's talk about high-functioning dysregulation. You won't find it in the DSM with a checklist beside it. Consider this more of a pattern or a profile, a way of describing something a lot of self-aware, capable people are living inside of while looking like they're holding it all together. From the outside, everything looks like it's working. You show up, things are getting done. You're the one that people describe as strong and calm and capable. But internally, your nervous system is running like there's always something to prepare for, always something to track or something to prevent. There's a constant background scan happening, reading the room or noticing tone changes, feeling responsible for the emotional temperatures around you. And for a lot of people, it's not loud anxiety or obvious overwhelm. It's more of a quiet, unnoticed pattern that's happening. It's like this tight chest that you don't notice anymore, or shoulders that never fully drop. It's that sense that rest sounds nice in theory, but feels strangely uncomfortable and possibly even unsafe in practice. We assume that dysregulation looks obvious. We notice when people fall apart or when they cry or shut down. And yes, that is dysregulation in its own self, but sometimes high-functioning dysregulation looks like being the most productive person in the room. It can look like checking the work 4 or 5 times over. It can be replying fast so no one gets upset, or being hyper aware of what everyone else needs and completely disconnected from what you need. So the question isn't always, are you functioning? Because you might be functioning beautifully. The better question is, what is it costing you to function like this? High functioning dysregulation isn't a weakness. Often it is your nervous system adapting and kicking into protection mode. And in a lot of cases, it adapted brilliantly. It helped you read the rooms and stay ahead of things, become the person that people could rely on. You end up with the guard dog that's still on duty all the time, still scanning and responding to tiny cues as if they mean danger, even when the threat isn't there in the same way anymore. And something to keep note of is that the thinking part of you, that CEO, might be completely up to date with what's happening. But our bodies, and that's our underlying nervous system work here, often works from older information. And that's why insight alone and awareness and anything in that CEO territory doesn't typically shift this pattern or profile. So let's make this practical. Here are 5 faces of high-functioning dysregulation. And just out of curiosity, see which ones feel inconveniently familiar to you. So phase 1 is what I like to call the capable one everyone leans on. This is the person who gets the call, the one that people come to for advice or support, plan, or even the solution. And because you can hold a lot, people assume that you're fine and okay holding a lot. You become known as the strong one, the one that doesn't need checking in on. And there might be some truth to that. You are definitely capable. But somewhere along the way, people forget to check whether you're being held too. And often you forget to check that for yourself as well. Because being needed is not the same thing as being nourished, and being useful is not the same thing as being supported. So the interrupt here, or what I like to call the mini antidote, is the support check. Before you step into supporting mode, pause and ask yourself, do I actually have capacity for this right now? Not, can I do it? Because you more than likely probably can. That's not the question. Do I have the capacity? And then I would like you to ask yourself a secondary follow-up question. And that is, what do I need before I say yes? It might be you need 5 minutes, or it might be like, hey, I can listen, but I can't problem solve today. Or, hey, I don't have the space to do this today, but maybe in a couple of days here. The other side of this is letting support in. So if you've been the capable one for a long time, asking for help can feel a little uncomfortable. So starting small, choose one safe person and send something simple to them. Say something like, hey, I don't need you to fix anything, but I could use a check-in today. Or say like, hey, do you mind if I send you a couple minutes of a voicey? I just need to vent. That's it. One small moment of being supported instead of being the support. So phase 2 is the one who can't rest. Sometimes this looks like obvious busyness. Always doing, organizing, fixing, or improving something. But sometimes it can be a little more subtle. You're technically sitting down, say on the couch, but you're not really resting. Your body's there and your mind is running like a full board meeting. What did I forget? What's happening tomorrow? What does this message mean? So even when you stop moving physically, nothing inside you actually stops, and rest starts to feel uncomfortable because stillness removes that distraction. And when there's no task and no role to perform, the things that you've been outrunning, shall we say, get a chance to rise up and show themselves. And for a nervous system that learned to survive by staying busy, that can feel really unsafe and really unsettling. So typically you keep moving forward. If this is your phase of high functioning dysregulation, this is the interrupt I want you to practice. And it's called micro-stopping. We're not taking a whole day off. We're not doing a perfect meditation where we have to work on our breath work and not think a thought. At the same time, we're just going to take around 30 seconds. And I want you to put your hands somewhere, grounding, so it could be your chest or your belly, your thigh. And I would like for you to look around the room slowly and name 3 things that you can see. And then say to yourself, nothing needs to be solved in this exact second. That's it. That's all we have to do. The aim of what we're doing here is to teach your nervous system that stopping for a moment doesn't mean danger. And if stillness has felt unsafe for you before, we don't want to start with a 3-hour breath block. It's going to be way too much. We want to start with 30 seconds, give or take, of not abandoning yourself. And we want to do multiple tiny reps throughout the day or throughout the week. So phase 3 is the over-preparer or the overthinker. So this is the person who doesn't just prepare. They prepare for the preparation. It's like they check the email 3 or 4 times before they send it. It's replaying the conversation that hasn't even happened yet in their head over and over again. It's having a backup plan for the backup plan. The brain is essentially a prediction machine. It's always trying to forecast what's coming so it can keep you safe. And uncertainty is expensive for it. So the over-preparer or the overthinker is running on a nervous system that's working hard to shrink the unknown. The trouble is, it kind of passes as being strategic. And sometimes it is. The difference is in the cost. For example, strategy feels clear. Dysregulation feels urgent. Strategy has choice in it. Dysregulation feels like I cannot not do this. And sometimes the over-preparing works. The meeting goes really well, so the nervous system goes, see, good thing we did all of that. And that pattern then gets reinforced. It starts to feel like the reason you did well is that you worried enough and prepared enough and controlled enough. So even when part of you wants to relax, another part of you just doesn't trust it. That's why telling someone to just stop overthinking is incredibly unhelpful They would if they felt safe. The overthinking is their nervous system that has learned to treat uncertainty as a threat. So the interrupt here, if this is your type of profile, is what we call the enough point. Before you keep checking and editing and rehearsing, ask what would be enough preparation for a regulated version of me. Not a panicked or activated version trying to prevent every possible thing on the planet. More of the regulated, grounded version, and then choose one clear enough point. So it might be with an email. I'll read it once more, make any obvious changes needed to be made, and then send it. Done. The goal is to stop letting the guard dog set the standard. It's not to become careless, but because when the guard dog is in charge, the enough point keeps moving. We want to bring that back in. Phase 4 is the emotionally disconnected one. This one can be a little confusing, especially for people who think of themselves as self-aware. You might understand emotions really well. You might be great at holding space for other people. You might have language patterns and understand attachment styles and have nervous system states down pat. But when someone asks, how are you actually feeling? There's a bit of a pause because you don't really know. You can explain what happened, you can analyze the pattern, but feeling it in your body is a whole entirely different thing. Sometimes this doesn't feel like anxiety. This feels like distance. Like you're watching yourself live life from behind the glass. Like you're at the dinner table in a meeting or doing the things, but you're not fully there. You're not present. And here's what's often happening underneath. There's a sense in the body called interoception, which is your brain's ability to read your own internal signals. When feeling everything becomes too much at some point, the nervous system can turn that volume down to protect you. So a lot of people mistake this for being calm, but being calm and disconnected aren't the same thing. Calm has presence involved. Disconnection has absence. So the interrupt here, if this is your face, your profile of high-functioning dysregulation, is a body check-in, not a brain check-in. Because if somebody asks you how you'll feel and your brain starts writing an essay on it, then, well, we're probably not actually checking in with ourselves. So instead of asking, how do I feel? I'd like for you to ask yourself, what do I notice in my body right now? It might be tightness or heaviness or temperature, warmth or cold. It could be something you're hearing, like a buzzing, a sense of being far away. We're not looking at interpreting any of this. We're just noticing what it is. You're rebuilding the bridge back to yourself, one body signal at a time. And phase 5 is the one who looks calm, but pays for it later. So this person holds it together beautifully in the moment. They don't explode. They get through all the things. It might be the meeting or that conversation, or they smile at that family event that is driving them absolutely batty. They keep their tone steady. And then later, when the pressure lifts, that's when everything hits them. They often cry in the car or somewhere where they're alone. When they get home, they crash. It's like everything is just too much and they are exhausted. And because the outside looked fine, often they can start questioning themselves, like, why am I so tired? Why did this affect me so much? But here's the mechanism. When you're under pressure, your body floods with stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. And one thing that they do is quieten your sense of how tired you actually are. You don't feel that cost whilst you're in it. The pressure lifts and you finally downshift, and that whole load that you were carrying surfaces. And that's why that crash comes after the fact, not during the event itself. So your nervous system can perform through something, even something traumatic, and still experience it as a lot later on. The output doesn't tell the whole story in that moment. The interrupt here is the aftercare window. If you know you can perform through pressure and that you crash later, don't wait for the crash to care for yourself. Build in a small decompression window after that event, whatever that might have been. So look at taking 5 minutes in the car or a quick walk around the block. You could put a hand on your chest, take a few slow, deep breaths, or even do some tapping before you move into the next role or the next thing that you're doing in your day. And the question you would ask yourself is, what does my nervous system need now that this event or this output is done? If this is your profile, I've linked the Nervous System Emergency Kit in the show notes because this is exactly what it was designed for the moments that you're activated or when you've just come out of that activation and you need some decompression. Just something simple and quick and guided to help you come back into your body and back into the moment and regulate once more. But even without that, I'd like for you to start building the habit of aftercare, because your nervous system just took on a lot and it needs a place to process that and come back into itself. So why is high functioning dysregulation, the pattern itself, so stubborn? Because at some point it worked. Being prepared helped you avoid being caught off guard. Being useful helped you stay connected, and being strong probably helped you through things you didn't have a lot of support for. Your nervous system isn't running this for fun. It's running it for a reason. That's why insight doesn't change it straight away. You can understand the pattern completely. Remember that thinking part of you might be up to date, but the body is working from older information. So this kind of change isn't about talking yourself into a new belief. It's about giving your nervous system enough lived proof that something else is safe now. A pause that doesn't end in chaos, a boundary that doesn't end in rejection, or a conversation where you say a little less and nothing falls apart. That's how this pattern starts to lose its grip, little bit by little bit. And there's a cost to having this profile, regardless of which face it is, that I want to talk about, because it can affect us in many ways, often very deeply. When your nervous system is constantly tracking other people, you can end up managing the connection instead of being in it. You notice the tone shift, you adjust before anybody asks. And from the outside, that can look caring, and maybe it is. But if you're always working the room, there's a good chance you're not fully present in the room either. And the good news is that presence is something you can rebuild. And every one of these small interrupts is a rep towards it. So here's the big takeaway from today. High functioning dysregulation can look really functional from the outside. Reliable, productive, calm, like you're just handling everything. And some of that might be genuine strength. The question is, what's driving it? Are you choosing it from a place of steadiness and groundedness? Or is your nervous system running an old pattern because it still thinks that that's what keeps you safe? And what I want you to start noticing is, where do you offer support and help to others before checking your own capacity? Where do you keep preparing long after it's actually useful? Where do you look calm in the moment and then pay for it later on? Where do you explain the feeling instead of actually feeling it? And where do you keep the peace and quietly lose yourself in the process? The interrupts are really simple. We've got the support check, the microstop, the enough point, the body check-in, and the aftercare window. None of these are the whole solution though. And I want to be really clear about that, because if this pattern has been running around for years upon years upon years, a 30-second pause alone isn't going to magically rewire the whole thing. But it does do something really important. It creates that interruption. They're small moments, yes, but your nervous system learns through repetition. So these small moments, these interruptions, are exactly how this changes. If this episode has resonated for you, in the show notes, there will be some key takeaways, and you'll have the interruptions, or the mini antidotes, if you will, and you can go in and check them out there. Coming up next, we're looking at the neuroscience of self-worth. And it links naturally to this episode because a lot of high-functioning humans' worth gets tangled up with the usefulness and the productiveness. How much can you hold? How well can you perform? And how little you need. So in the next episode, we're going into why self-worth can be so incredibly hard to shift, even when you logically know you're enough. We'll see you then. Hey, my beautiful friend. Thanks for hanging out and listening to today's episode. If you want to keep the momentum going, head over to the vault at minddrophq.com/podcast. It's where all the tools, resources, and gold from the show are kept, so your growth doesn't stop when the episode ends. If this episode sparks something in you, share it with a friend or someone who needs to hear this. The more people having these conversations, the bigger the ripple we create. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. It really means the world. Until next time, keep being your gorgeous, unstoppable self.